Welcome to the Fossil Fundamentals podcast, brought to you by fossilsuk.com. I'm Byron, paleontologist, geologist, and lifelong fossil hunter. And in this show, we sit down with collectors, experts, and adventurers to uncover the real stories behind the fossils. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Fossil Fundamentals podcast. Today, I'm joined by someone many of you will already know from the Yorkshire Fossil community. He's a paleontologist, writer, educator, science communicator. He's one of the organisers of the Yorkshire Fossil Festival and founding trustee of Earth Science Outreach UK. He's a friend of the show. It's Dr. Liam Herringshaw. Welcome to the show, Liam.
Thanks, Byron.
Yeah, I mean, did I leave anything out there? I'm not sure.
There's always more bits, but it just gets silly, you know. How many hats do you want to wear?
Yeah.
Fine. That gives a pretty good flavour.
Yeah. So if anyone hasn't met you before and doesn't know you, then let's give them a rundown of who you are, how you got into fossils, what your path was. Let's talk about all that.
Yeah. So I'm a paleontologist. How did I get into it? I don't know. I mean, I remember going on school trips when I was about 10. So I grew up in Leicester. Leicester Museum obviously has some great fossils. So that was definitely a way in. And then school trips when I was like 10 or 11, Peak District and other sort of geological places. And I guess that kind of caught my eye. And then I don't know. I guess I didn't really know how you got into it. How do you actually do?
Yeah, I mean, back then, it was very difficult as well for me, really. I was interested, but I didn't really know how you took it any further, really.
Well, that's it. And I think I was really lucky that when I went to sixth form college to do A-levels, my geography teacher, she was really a geologist. That was her kind of secret passion. So when she realized that was something I was actually very interested in, she ended up suggesting doing an A-level geology because she taught it as separate if there was enough people. And so I ended up doing this as a kind of separate thing. And I think that was really then, thanks, Mrs. Reed, because you made it possible for me to go to university and study geology, and then at university realize that actually I really liked sedimentary rocks and fossils and kind of how animals have interacted with their environment through deep time. And there was never a big plan. I'd love to say I knew exactly what I wanted to do, but it was, just kind of, oh, that's interesting. I'll go with that. And I ended up doing a PhD at Birmingham, having done undergrad at Liverpool. And that was kind of, that was fossils. It was fossils of the Wenlock limestone. So actually I spent a lot of time looking at Dudley and the Welsh borders. And that was great. I mean, it was mostly collections based. It wasn't a lot of, going out and doing tons of field work. It was things in museums and university collections. So I guess I began really at that point doing marine Paleozoic paleontology. And then I kind of went with wherever opportunities came up. So I was in Birmingham for a bit after a PhD. Then I got a sort of research post in the University of Aberdeen. Spent a couple of years there. And that actually was the beginning of, I think we'll come on to it a bit more, but actually moving away from body fossils into trace fossils. And so I've always been interested in how, I guess, ecology, how do environments work and animals and plants and things in environments work over time. So I kind of then gradually moved away from the sort of Silurian Dudley kind of stuff into trace fossils, really. So that's, I suppose, then up until 2020 when I was still working in universities, that was what my research was all about. How do burrowing creatures affect their environments and how does environmental change affect them? And then COVID came along and I just kind of ended up becoming a freelance paleontologist almost by accident. So yes, I now don't have any university affiliation. I do whatever people ask me to do within reason.
We'll come back to that later, I'm sure. But was there any one moment where you thought, well, I really do like geology? Was there like a first fossil you found, or
I remember there being a kind of a fairly, I think it must have been a glacial erratic. I remember there being a fairly rubbish ammonite that came out pebbles in either my parents' or grandparents' garden. Um,
Yeah,
so there was Leicester. There are Jurassic rocks nearby.
yeah,
It
yeah.
probably, but it was all. I now know it was all till Ice Age stuff. But my uncle had got a couple of Whitby ammonites, and I remember them being on my grandparents'
Right,
windowsill. And
okay.
I was like, "Oh right, what are they?" Quite liked the look of them
Yeah,
without really knowing what they were. Um, and then, yeah, I suppose I was probably more geological to begin with, although I liked fossils. I kind of thought I'd go into rocks, minerals, and that sort of thing. And then, yeah, at university, actually, I remember again the final year field trip we did in Liverpool. We went to southeast Spain, and we found lots of interesting things. But the one I remember standing out was that there was an area which supposedly had birds' footprint fossils,
oh,
and we didn't
interesting.
find any
Yeah.
of those, but we did find a hoofed mammal footprint. And I was like, wow,
Oh,
that's
wow.
cool. So
Yeah, yeah,
something walked
yeah,
here
yeah,
back in
yeah,
Miocene, it's about 5 million years old, something like that. It's like, wow, that's really cool. And it's literally where it was. So I guess that was perhaps the beginning of the traces. But I did do
yeah,
body
yeah, yeah,
stuff, probably for, so I guess, 'cause again, I didn't really know how would you study trace fossils. That wasn't something I had
yeah. No,
a good
no.
sense of. So it was probably quite incremental almost, different
Yeah,
moments
yeah,
building up to going,
yeah,
oh, right, it could do that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, interesting. I mean, for me, it was. I had no way of doing geology at GCSE
Oh,
or A
right.
level. Nothing. Everybody knew I was interested in it because the running joke was, "Oh, do you want to come around and see my rock collection?" Yeah, never a winner. Um, but I kind of just kind of still did. You know, was very good at doing like the geology section of geography,
Mm.
physical geography. Um, never interested in the human element. I was always interested in landscapes and stuff. Um, and it wasn't really because at that time you either had to do like a combined sciences thing, so there was no like chemistry, physics, and whatever. And then you find out that you know to go to university to do geology, you need physics and chemistry, and then so
Yeah.
so
And I think it's,
luckily, I got through to the I got through the clearing system in the
yeah,
end
okay.
to do geology at Cardiff, which was absolutely fantastic in the
Well,
end.
it's funny you mention that because my last academic job was at Hull Uni, and I ended up being the admissions tutor for geography,
Yeah,
geology, environmental science. And the number of people I said to, people get here by strange routes, and
yeah,
if there's
yeah,
something
yeah,
you want to do, there will be
yeah,
a way to get you in. But it might be a bit odd or a bit, you might have to go
yeah,
through some hoops,
yeah,
whatever. But the clearing system, particularly, it does offer opportunity. But again, there's so much luck, as you say, about if you go to a school or a college or whatever that doesn't have anybody teaching anything geological, knowing anything about geology or
yeah, yeah.
paleontology, how, I mean, now I guess online information is so available, it's probably much more straightforward. But yeah, back in the
Yeah.
90s, it was very hit and miss. And I think a lot of people I've met over the years have said, I
Well,
really wanted to
well, I
do.
mean, well, yeah, well, I mean, hit and miss. I mean, in the early '90s, there was no such thing as the internet for a
Well, no,
start.
exactly.
So,
That's it. So
so,
yes,
so
how do you find stuff out? It's quite
yeah,
different.
exactly. You go to a library and pick out a book
Mm.
and read it, start reading it. Yeah, I mean, it's changed significantly now. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, I never, yeah, and it was great. It was a great opportunity that I had. I mean, obviously for me, it was my best subject was design technology. Believe it or not, so very organised project work, and a different type of learning
Yeah.
to the standard. I would have
Well,
thought.
and I think probably people, until they get into the subject, don't appreciate how many different skills can be useful.
Yeah,
There's no
yeah,
such thing as a geologist in a simple sense. There's loads of
no,
different people
no,
from and yeah, having that mix of skills. We'd say it's quite a creative subject. Being able to write, being numerate, being design, technology, project management, all sorts of things come into it. And I think it can be, sometimes you get the sense that it's only for certain people or it's a certain
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
But
yeah,
actually we
yeah.
need, and we often said this at universities, we
And
need
it's
people
such
from
a.
different
I
backgrounds.
mean, I would have thought. I mean, doing my jolly undergraduate, it was kind of like a so many different sciences in
Mm.
one. So you're doing different modules, and you'll be doing one day you'll be doing geochemistry, which ended up being one of my better subjects as well. Never doing chemistry before, go figure. But then you'll be doing volcanology, or you'll be doing sedimentology, so you get, or even cosmology. We did cosmology as well. So we did all these different subjects, and then obviously the further you go through the university career, you then become more and more and more specialised to the point where you're the world's expert in hinge points on brachiopods or something.
Yes.
Like that means
Yeah, and
something
I
in
think
this
also
world.
I've seen this over the years, that as many universities, particularly those that are very research focused, as they perhaps increase their specialities of certain types
Yeah,
of geology,
yeah,
I
yeah,
think one of the downsides of that was that back in the 90s, quite a lot of geology degree programs were quite broad because departments
yeah,
had quite a
yeah, yeah,
breadth of people. I'm not saying there's not still that, but I think in some cases it's harder to get that breadth as an undergraduate, and also how you know that there's that breadth there. Until you start doing
yeah,
it, you
yeah,
don't know what the teachers are like exactly. You don't know what the research things you're interested in could be. So
yeah.
it's tricky.
And sometimes I think you excel by the teacher.
Mm.
The actual how the teacher teaches you is the person that inspires you, really,
Yeah,
at the end of
absolutely.
it, isn't it?
And I think this is something I'll probably come back to it, but yeah, inspirational educators, and that I think I
Yes,
use that term
yeah,
quite broadly because it doesn't have to be a teacher or a university. There's great
no,
teachers out there who are not,
yeah,
officially teachers, but they can have such a legacy. I think it's a really
yeah, yeah. We
important
might
thing.
come back to that later.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So let's get into it. Ichnology. Tell everybody what ichnology is.
Well, again,
Ichnology.
I
Yeah,
don't think I had
it's
any.
not an itchology. It's
Yeah,
about. Go on. Tell
it's well,
everybody
yeah.
about
So ichnos is the Greek word for tracks, trails, burrows. So the word actually has been in existence for quite a long time. I think the 1850s people started using it. They were looking at fossil footprints mainly.
Yeah, yeah,
So yes, I think and it's also it's a funny one because it often associates with geology and paleontology, but actually because you're looking at particularly animals making an impression in sediment, there's always a kind of modern element to it as well. You
yeah,
can't
yeah,
really
yeah.
understand these fossilized features if you've not got some understanding of how modern creatures move or
Yeah,
burrow
and
or live.
that's where when I was at university, it was paleobiology. It wasn't
Yeah.
paleontology. It was paleobiology because you're looking at modern day representations and trying to study that over the millions of years
Yeah, and
time.
we
So
sometimes find. I mean, I'm not as active as I was in the sort of ichnological research world, but there were points where some people talk about paleoichnology and neoichnology. I don't know that was
right,
really
okay,
very helpful necessarily, but
yeah,
at least you could say, right, they're looking at modern trace makers and they're looking at ancient ones. But I think you have
yeah,
to bring a bit of both. And I think, yeah, like paleobiology, if you can understand life on Earth now, then you can make a lot better sense of life
yeah,
in
yeah,
time.
yeah. So what types of what types of things are we looking at? So we're looking at footprints,
Yeah,
burrows,
yeah. I mean, I
and
think say
anything that was biological that made a trace in the rock. I
yeah, I
guess.
mean, yeah, essentially that anything that's not the remains of the animal or plant itself, but of its behavior, its life. So, we talk about footprints and burrows, but of course, coprolites, and I suppose eggs, shells, maybe. There's a bit of a borderline things like, is that a body? Is it,
Yeah, a
but
bit borderline.
it's
Yeah,
a bit more borderline. But yeah, there are things where essentially you're looking at evidence of their behavior, their
behavior,
movement.
evidence of their behavior, evidence of their environment,
Yeah.
paleontology.
And actually, there's a really funny story from very early on where, in fact, probably before the word officially existed, but people were finding, in fact, these particular ones are from from Dumfries and Galloway in southwest Scotland,
Yeah,
sandstones, which I think are now Permian, but at the time they weren't quite sure how old they were, and they had these footprints in them, and the reverend, the local sort of vicar, had found them, and he passed them on to geologists. They eventually got to William Buckland at Oxford
yeah,
University, who was probably the first paleobiologist in that sort of experimental sense. And he
yeah,
said, right,
yeah,
these look like
yeah,
tortoise footprints. I'm going to get a tortoise, make it walk across pie dough and see if it makes the same footprints. Now, he was a brilliant paleobiologist. He wasn't a very good cook. So apparently the pie dough was rubbish, and the tortoise they put in just stuck. He didn't move. And then in came the cook from the house and said, "Oh, for the sake, Professor Buckland, let me do it." And so she put the proper sort of pastry dough on the table, and then off went the tortoise, and it made these beautiful impressions that look very much like these things they'd found in the sandstones in southwest Scotland. So they became known as Kellickness or tortoise tracks. And they're one of the first, I think, to be named. And okay, we now think they're not made by tortoises, but it's a brilliant approach, and I think that's the key thing is taking that kind of
I mean, William Buckland was always doing things.
Yeah,
weird,
exactly.
Weird things like that. I mean, he actually, for the viewers out there, he's very renowned for having a pet hyena in his office, in a cage that he used to throw bones to. Which then the hyena would gnaw on these bones, and it would then compare those to bones that were being gnawed but were fossils.
Yeah, and in fact, I think the same thing.
How eccentric is that?
And they had these bony coprolites, and he was able to show that the hyenas crunching up the bone were making the same things like this. It's got to be the same thing. So it's a brilliant approach, and I think it really did begin that kind of world of paleobiology, of which trackways and traces do come in, but maybe not always as much as the body fossils, because they're perhaps a bit more challenging in some ways, or less immediately.
I'm just looking at my questions. And we've probably already answered this one, but for the listeners, how important are they for understanding evolution? I mean, anyway.
They're really interesting. I think this was the great thing. Again, I don't think I'd appreciated it until I kind of got involved in a couple of projects, initially in Aberdeen, and then actually in Canada, where I spent a couple of years working. And there were two big things around them studying these trace fossils. They were marine burrows, so mainly worm, crustacean, mollusk structures. Generally, we didn't know what the trace maker was. You wouldn't have the trace maker fossilized; you just have these structures. But there were two things. One, that you could talk about, or you could examine how these burrows and these structures were changing through time, and the Cambrian explosion, the kind of the evolution of animals in a very simple sense. One of the key things that you see is the appearance of complex burrowing in marine sediment. So there's the Precambrian. There are some trails and beginnings of things, but it's really there's a shift as creatures start to evolve that can then get into sediments and create new habitats and make new ways of life. But the other thing that was really interesting that I hadn't perhaps thought about as much was not only is that story coming out, but also the creatures are changing the way the sediment behaves in a way that can not only affect how it sort of fossilizes or lithifies, but also later on, much later on, can have surprising impacts. So you find that like how water or oil and gas or liquids and other substances move through the rock. If it's been burrowed, you'll get different pathways to if it hasn't. And so we found ourselves sort of getting into different directions about sometimes purely sort of evolution.
Which obviously has an economic.
Well, I think and this was it. There were people looking at
the oil industry.
Well, people looking at aquifers in various places, but also particularly at that time.
Aquifers,
I think people were looking, well, if it's a sandstone, which could be a hydrocarbon reservoir, has it been burrowed? Because that's going to affect how things have moved through it. So I mean, I guess I was, if I'm honest, more interested in the kind of abstract scientific kind of stuff, but it was still, an eye opener to this thought of a creature 300, 400, whatever million years ago affecting water pathways and gas pathways now.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting. I mean, when I talk to people about because obviously I'm from a taphonomic background, so effectively how that fossil has become a fossil from it dying to you then finding it, which is incredible. Incredible. And then you've got the ichnology part of it, behavior, how it lived and things like that. There's so many different little parts of paleontology which get you really having kind of like a thinking process involved in look at what you can relate it to modern day life, how things do the things they do now. That's the bit about paleontology I like, is the fact that you're looking at these ancient creatures but we know so much of them because of the way we've done all those those other
Yeah,
processes.
and again, when I moved out to Canada on this 2-year project, was sort of essentially looking at the Precambrian-Cambrian boundary and the evolution of animals burrowing in the seabed. But one of the things that my postdoctoral supervisor, Professor Duncan McIlroy, sort of got me doing is that we need an aquarium where we can put in some modern
Oh,
equivalents.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah,
just going ragworms and lugworms,
yeah, yeah,
bivalves,
yeah,
shrimp, what do they do? And also, if you give them a kind of pristine sedimentary environment, and of course during evolution, you don't quite get that, but you can say, all right, what happens if you introduce them to a layered set of sediments? What are they doing, and why are they doing it? And how
yeah,
does
yeah,
that
yeah,
change both from environment to environment, but also perhaps over time? Do they engineer new habitats? And the answer is they do. And this became a real sort of fascination of
yeah, yeah.
what we now
Did,
call
did
ecosystem
you? So
engineering.
you actually had live specimens
Yes, I would say
and
that's
make a proper like experiment with them in the feed them and all that kind of thing. A
yeah. So
proper experiment. Yeah, yeah, cool.
Duncan
Yeah,
had a lab on the same corridor as our offices, and it had these saltwater tanks that were in a kind of circulation system.
yeah,
And
yeah,
over the years, he'd done different things, but we particularly looked at these sort of so the creatures that might be making structures like the ones we saw in the very early Cambrian, uh,
yeah, yeah.
which conveniently also includes rocks in Newfoundland. So we could literally go and look at the Precambrian Cambrian boundary in Newfoundland and what's
Oh, right.
before and after,
Yeah, that
and
would
then
have
we
been
can look
good.
at the sorts of
Yeah,
structures that are being made by worms, by crustaceans, and yeah, one of the things we really got into was this idea of some ecosystems being engineered by these new creatures. So the Precambrian world, the sea floor at least, is kind of 2D with microbial mats and things attaching
yeah,
but
yeah,
not much
yeah,
moving. And then
yeah,
as animals begin to come in, evolve, you start to see this third dimension of depth coming
yes,
in, and then
yeah,
and
yeah,
then not only do you get rid of certain things, it kills off certain species, but it also
yeah, yeah.
allows new ones to exploit new space. So
Yeah,
it
and
became a
they're probably
fascinating.
they might have been doing that to get away from some of the
Well,
predators as
yeah,
well,
that's it. I mean, I
things like
guess
that.
yeah,
So so there's yeah, yeah,
why is it happening? Is it always
yeah,
is it always kind of, it's not deliberate? We perhaps think of it sometimes as a almost like, oh, this is happening because of this, but yeah, there may all be multiple causes.
yeah, yeah. That's fascinating. I mean, we could have a whole podcast just talking
Yes,
about
because there's a
ecology,
danger
really,
of
to be
going
fair,
off into
couldn't we? But
ichnology and fundamentals.
yeah, well, yeah, yeah, geology fundamentals.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean that's that. But then obviously we're gonna go on from ecology now into some of your other passions, which is science communication, really. So so for those of you, well, I'm going to say, go on, tell us what it is, and then tell us why it's so important, why it's rewarding, and
well, I
let's see where we go from there.
yeah, I think as you were just touching on with taphonomy, kind of how things fossilize, there are often these quite strange or abstract, or perhaps just things you never thought of, kind of concepts. And I think it's really for earth scientists and for paleontologists it's really important that we can try and bring the public, the people, kind of with us as much as possible, because
Yeah,
that then means we get support for what we're doing. And why are you doing this? Why is it? Why should it
yeah,
be funded? Why should it happen? So I think good science communication is an absolutely vital part of doing the thing. Now, not everyone wants to do it, and I think that's again
yeah,
part of
yeah,
this having different roles. I realized probably quite early on I wasn't very good at writing grants that got money, and I didn't love writing research papers. I liked doing up the research. I liked talking to people about it, but I wasn't that bothered about
yeah,
sitting down and
yeah,
writing a great long. I did it, but it wasn't something I was high up on the list. And I think probably when I got to Aberdeen as a sort of after I'd done my PhD, there was a science festival all the schools came to, and they
yeah,
said,
yeah,
right, we're going to do something. Anyone want to get involved? And I said, yes, I do. I'd love to go and talk to the kids about what we're up to. And I guess
yeah,
that
yeah,
was kind of the beginning. I'm
yeah,
sure
yeah.
I wasn't particularly good at it at the start, but
Yeah,
you,
because I mean, at the end of the day, you're trying to inspire the next generation
yeah,
of scientists, aren't we?
yeah,
That's the ultimate goal. And if we can inspire at least one out of 100, one out of 10, one out of 1,000 to then go on to be the next doctor, nurse, scientist, physicist, um,
yeah. And I
it's been
think
worthwhile.
and I think a lot of it as well is that kind of raising awareness that the person being told this stuff may never become a paleontologist from earth science or whatever, but the fact that you now know about it means you probably look at the world in a slightly different way.
Yes.
And I've had
Yeah.
people talk about, being on the beaches and now they look for fossils in a way they never did, or they're in town
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
look at building stones or whatever. You can
Yeah.
you can find ways in, and I think trying to infuse people in the natural world. And then we also put who got you going. Well, of course, David Attenborough was such a key kind of figure in that communication of natural history, and he obviously loves fossils and but I think generally the more people who are sharing their passion as clearly as they can, and I say it's tricky sometimes because it can be quite abstract or quite
Yeah. Yeah.
weird.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, if we try and do it and we try and help people both understand it and do it themselves, then I think that's good for our science and our community and the world at large,
Yeah,
probably.
because I mean, sometimes we won't get too bogged down in it, but sometimes there is that kind of like a disconnect between academia and the public sometimes, and it's trying to bridge that gap slightly, isn't it? It's
Yeah, and
trying to
and that
trying to
actually,
get trying to get those concepts and knowledge into the general populace, isn't it?
yeah, I think, and ultimately that was what kind of led me to stop working in universities and kind of go freelance, because it became harder, at least in my experience, of doing the outreach that I felt we should be doing, because
Yeah.
other things, were deemed more important or priority. So eventually, when there's an opportunity to move away and go into something more about general kind of communication of paleontological earth science arose, I was like, yeah, actually, I think this is the time for me now. I've had a good go at academic stuff, and I'm probably not quite the research person, and yeah,
Yeah.
time for a slight change. So yeah, that's kind of, I guess, what took me to where I've been, particularly the last 6-7 years, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, it must be very rewarding though, doing that kind of work.
Oh yeah, I mean that's it. It's so much fun meeting people who are interested.
Yeah.
When we
Yeah.
recently did the Redcar Kite Festival and had a fossil zone in the Kirkleatham Museum. So many people came along and just got into interesting conversations with different members of the
Yeah,
community,
and
and it
and
was
it's
just
also different ages as well, isn't it?
yeah, absolutely, yes. I think
It's not just children. It's
no,
it's people of all ages are vaguely
and
interested.
and I think that's again really important, because yes, you might wish, or you wanted to do it and you couldn't do it and you wish, but actually, I've had people in their 70s, 80s go, yeah, I've kind of had interest in here, I couldn't do it or didn't do it, whatever. But now, okay, I mean, I haven't got that many years left, but I'm gonna, do as much
Yeah,
as I can of this,
yeah.
and that's
I
great.
mean,
Yeah,
what
whatever.
realistically, we've seen that. I mean, I would say we've had certainly a big push since COVID. Really,
Yeah,
I think since COVID, we've had a big push towards the experience,
yeah,
the kind of I suppose experience
yeah,
led
yeah. I
things
think that's it.
like fossil walks and festivals and stuff like that. So people have started looking at doing that, and we have seen a lot more people going to the coast doing geology, and it's nice to see also recently that the earth science has been put back on the curriculum as well, which is
Yeah,
which
it,
is
it, it
great.
is hard, and I think one of the things I've found, again, particularly the last few years, I've done quite a lot of work with primary schools. Is in primary schools in the UK, they have to do rocks in year 3. They have to do
Yeah,
evolution in year 6. A lot of teachers in primary schools go, "I don't know anything about rocks. I don't know about evolution. How can you help
yeah,
with
yeah,
this?" So we've
yeah,
we've
yeah,
done quite a lot of work on that. But actually, one of the big problems is then when you get to the next level at secondary school, earth science often sort of disappears, and unless you've got a
yes,
teacher
yeah,
who
yeah,
loves
yeah,
it, and it could be a physicist or a chemist or a geographer or whatever, then it can kind of vanish, and then it might come back later. But there is a problem still, I think, between this early enthusiasm and then kind of turning it into a qualification or a job or whatever. And we have this problem in the UK, at least, of that
yeah,
transfer.
yeah,
But yeah, you're right. I mean, we look at most of the great challenges facing humanity today, and there's almost always an earth
yeah,
element to them.
yeah,
Whether
yeah,
it's where we
absolutely.
get stuff from, or whether we should or shouldn't burn things, or whatever. All these
Yeah,
things
yeah, yeah,
are in
yeah.
some way geological. So I think it's a really
Yeah, yeah,
important.
absolutely. I
Um,
think well, not just that. It's actually where you live, or
yeah, yeah,
is usually a geological explanation for where your town is. It was built on something or other, or they dug something out of the ground, and that's why that town's there, and all that kind of thing. So yeah, it kind of a kind of. I mean, I recently was discussing this with the fact that there's this disconnect between the ages. And I was discussing that with Neville and Sally about the fact that they're doing the digs and what have you, and they've seen particularly at the Lyme Regis Fossil Festival, I saw a big community starting to appear within the student population, if that's the right word. So I would say ages of say 17 to 25, I guess, which is round about that I'm thinking about going to university. And I'm interested in fossils, but there's not, there's like rock watch for the very, very younger children, but there's not really a kind of society association for that kind of age bracket, is there, really?
No, and I think that's right. You're saying about people who perhaps want to go and study at university, or maybe go and think about postgrad or jobs, or actually that's a really crucial kind of period and actually having a community developing, as you say. I mean, Nev and Sally have done a fantastic job of sort of starting to spend several years kind of developing this. And I think you probably, you go back to your years in Cardiff, you probably had kind of a departmental society and activity, but I don't remember them being particularly connected across universities. It now feels like there's quite a big young paleo community, but as I say, it should be open to anyone who wants to get involved. But
I mean, the only I think the only thing I had was like things like SVPCA and so that's the Society of Vertebrate Paleontology, some of the others.
Comparative anatomy, I think, isn't it?
Comparative anatomy, that's right.
But but again, it's like you're straight into sort of what looks like quite academic stuff, and I think it can be a bit daunting sometimes.
Yeah, it was very daunting.
Oh, cracky, all these different experts,
particularly for an 18-year-old.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
you have to present you have to present a poster paper about what your research is and what have you, or if you were mad enough, do actually a talk in front of 200 people, which I did. And that went very badly wrong. but there we go.
But you learn, don't you?
Yes, yeah. And like I say, that it's great to see that kind of small community developing over time, which is great.
Yeah.
Where are we up to? Yeah, and just talking about science communication. I mean, the UK. I think there is a growing trend amongst all of us. Really, that's kind of why we've kind of coalesced around doing things together. Is because there is a not a need as such, but there is a chasm there that needs filling, a void that needs filling of like-minded people that can help out in the UK geology scene, really, isn't it?
Yeah, there's
people like yourself, Steve, Neville and Sally, the guys down in the Fossil Festival down in Lyme Regis as well. It was great. It was great to see, really.
Yeah, and I think it's how does, I think, because paleontology, it's not a priority for governments or things like that. So you have this challenge. But one of the things we always say to people is paleontology brings a heck of a lot of pleasure and happiness to a lot of people. And that's something we should recognize as a good thing. It doesn't have to always have a kind of, a commercial value, or it can also have this thing of just being good for people in a, a socially stimulating, whatever, all that kind of stuff.
Well, so I mean, I was just the previous podcast. I was talking to a local collector, and I was saying, just actually the physicality of actually going out on the beach and walking on the beach is a good thing, a good mental health thing for a start. Getting, obviously at the minute it's very hot, and then we can have the extremes of that as well, very, very wet. But actually, just physicality of actually getting out in the open air, away from this thing, the computer. Where more often than not we're looking at a phone or looking at a computer screen, is a good thing.
Yeah,
and should be celebrated. Yeah,
that's it. And I think, as you said, there's an appetite for that. Whether that's an organised dig along the lines of the things that Sally and Nev and others have been doing, or whether it's just taking a small group out on a fossil walk or whatever. Actually going out somewhere with a group of people, looking at stuff, looking for stuff, chatting about what you're doing, and it's
Yeah,
good for
yeah,
people on the whole. And
yeah,
hopefully,
yeah.
yeah,
So I mean, you've done like fossil days at the Rotunda and things like that, where just people can come and look at things and
and I think
chat to people.
there's a lot of people out there in the kind of paleo and geology community who want to do that if they can. And okay, it's easier probably for retired people; they've got more time. But I think in
Yeah,
general, we all want to help enthuse the next generation, or generation that's already gone by that wants to pick new things up.
yeah,
There's a lot of value to it. So the Rotunda Geology Group have done a lot of fossil handling sessions at the Rotunda Museum in Scarborough, and they'll be doing plenty more over the holidays.
yeah.
Whitney Museum.
We've got a fossil day coming up, haven't we? At
Yeah,
the Whitney
exactly.
Museum.
I mean, it's tricky because of course a lot of museums don't have funding in great supply. They perhaps don't have a big team of
No,
people. It can be tricky, but if you can work out how to kind of link those different people up, then
yeah,
there's
yeah,
definitely an appetite for
yeah, yeah,
fun
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, we get onto some of the other bigger things that you've been doing. So, you have been one of the organisers of the Yorkshire Fossil Festival. So let's talk about that. I mean, it's very close to both of us, really, because we've both been involved in different ways.
Yeah,
You in the organising, me just turning up and doing my thing. Um, but I mean, that's grown significantly in the past
yeah,
few
and
years.
I think again, what
And
was a
what was
really
what
nice
well, let's
surprise.
talk about how it developed and
Yeah,
what the original idea was. And
so I think let's see what year it'd been. I was when I came back to the UK from Canada in about 2010. I got involved with the Paleontological Association, and I ended
yes,
up on their kind of outreach team. It was quite a new thing. We did a public engagement group, and we went down to Lyme Regis and did the fossil festival. It was great,
yeah, yeah,
and we kind of I think it might have been the second time we did it. We were on the way back. Some of us came up to Yorkshire, coming home, and we're like, why isn't there anything quite like this? And then we got chatting
further
with
north, yeah,
people saying there have been events, of course, further
yeah,
north,
yeah,
but it's not been a regular thing like the Lyme Regis Fossil Festival. So because we were on the Palas Paleontological Association sort of engagement group, we said, is this something, because Palas supports Lyme Regis, could it
yeah, yeah,
support a northern kind of version? Um,
yeah,
so yeah, that's kind of, I suppose, how it began. And uh, Will Watts, who you know well, but maybe others
yeah,
don't know, Will was the curator at the Scarborough Museum, and then he'd gone freelance, and he was happy to take on new projects, and he thought there was mileage in, trying to deliver. I
yeah,
think 2014 was the first year that we tried it, and the original agreement was to do it every 2 years, but it went really well, and so everyone said, "Are you doing it
yeah,
next year?" We were like,
yeah,
"Yeah, if Scarborough Museum," and I guess this was the challenge of saying, okay, but where? How do you fund it? You could do it
yeah,
once,
yeah,
perhaps, but
yeah,
how does it become more sustainable? And that is obviously a challenge. And I know Lyme Regis have wrestled with similar
yeah.
challenges over the years. So yeah, that's we'd like to every year. How do we? And
Yeah, I remember doing one in the spa. I can't remember, was it
yeah, well, we did.
Geo something or other? Or,
There was, again, Will had said there had been some quite big events in the spa previously, but they were just kind of, I guess, the Dinosaur Coast project when that was running, 25 years ago on the
yeah,
Yorkshire
no,
coast.
this was like I think this was a Geology Society
Oh, okay.
thing in the spa,
Yeah, I mean,
which was
I
quite
know
a
the
big
spa
event,
was
really.
used, but yeah, it wasn't
Yeah,
an annual thing.
yeah,
And then Scarborough museums were great. They sort of hosted it for a few years. Then it got
yeah, yeah,
a little bit more tricky for various reasons. So when I was working at Hull Uni, we actually hosted it one year there as kind of part of the Hull Science Festival. Then we went back to Scarborough. Then COVID came along, and obviously that kind of rather changed things. Um,
yeah.
and then we did, Scarborough hybrid, Scarborough Spa, and then Whitby, which was great because it was a change of location in
Venue. Yeah, yeah,
2023.
yeah.
And then
And the way,
Redcar
I mean, the
2024.
Whitby one was probably my favourite one, mainly because of the activities around that.
Yeah,
As in, we did like a night at the
yeah,
museum thing. That was it. That was great. And, that was incredible. Steve the Rock Showman
yeah,
brought over some of his entertainers, and we did like an evening session actually at the museum,
yeah.
which was incredible.
Yeah, and I
That
think
kind of juncture position between performing arts and geology was entertaining.
Well, and I
Very
think Steve's not here to to give his perspective, but Steve getting involved as the rock showman with his circus background of many years and event management background and his creative flair brought something. It took us in a new direction, and I think that was for me particularly the light bulb moment, because we often talked about, could we make it more like a circus? Could it be like kind of, I don't know, steampunk or Big Top or whatever? Could we bring some like the Great Days of the Seaside to the Fossil Festival? And we never quite. We did elements of it. We never quite got there until Steve and Helen and Let's Circus team kind of got fully on board in the Whitby year, and it was a lot of work. I mean, Steve will, I'm sure, agree that it was a it was a busy old time, not least because we'd done the 2022 one in Scarborough in September and then agreed to do the Whitby one in June to time with the bicentenary and also to make it work better for them. And it was like, crikey, we've just done one 6 months ago. We'll do it again in a new location. So it was quite a lot of learning on the hoof. But as you say, it had so many interesting and engaging elements. And we probably did too much, really, because we were a bit stretched at points. But you learn from doing that. And I think, again, it showed that there was an appetite for that more creative engagement. And you can broaden your audience. I think this, again, it's a thing that if it's just a fossil festival, you may only attract people who think they're interested in fossils. Or if it's something a bit different, maybe you start.
That's why when it's been up at it was then up at the Kite Festival up in Redcar, which was fantastic because then you get in. You're getting the people that are coming to the Kite Festival, not knowing that we're here.
Yeah, but what is this?
What's all this about? Dinosaurs and stuff. And then, so you're getting a very new clientele base. I'm going to say clientele base, but
well, yeah, it is. It's a very
you're getting a new people who have never probably thought about fossils.
Yeah, I mean,
suddenly. What, you find fossils in Redcar?
Yeah, it's like, I think if people know about fossils on the Yorkshire coast, they'll almost certainly say Whitby, and that's with very good reason. But actually, we can show people that there are other places which have also really interesting and varied geology and paleontology. And I think Redcar was I think quite an eye opener for a lot of people, because they're like, really? Does it have it? It's like, it's one of the easiest places to find stuff. Now, you might not find your fantastic pyritized ammonite nodules in the way you might get something in Whitby, but you will find great stuff, and it's not hard to find something. So I think it was a really nice, as you say, being part of a festival that was already separate. It was a different thing that brought a different audience in, and then we were showing people that their local beach had geological.
But you got a captive audience that and you
add something,
and then you can then do lectures, you can do talks, you can do entertainment, you can do whatever, but it's geology related. So then they're getting all that science put into
and I think that's again the idea of science communication. I think it doesn't always have to be scientific in the strict sense. It can be communicating, engaging in other creative ways. Science is a creative process. There are many other creative processes, and we should look to try and bring those in.
That's why we're doing a podcast.
Yes, exactly.
So,
and that's it. Yeah, how do you do things that your communication isn't just a single path? It's in person. It's it's in school. It's in museums. It's on the beach. It's online or whatever. All these different things that you can reach different people.
Yeah. So what's the future? Is there any future plans for the Yorkshire Festival? I mean,
it's tricky, I think, because when we did it in Redcar in 2024, it was great, and again, it was a new location, so we learned a lot, and it was challenging in some respects, but fantastic in many others. And then it became a bit more discussion of, right, well, we don't have an official host venue. We're nomadic now. We've been in Scarborough, what do we do next? And when we got the funding in, or particularly when Steve had helped get funding for Whitby, one of the comments was, perhaps you should think about creating a charity or an organisation that can deliver the festival. So that essentially was then what we did in 2020, late 2024 into 2025, to create what we now call Earth Science Outreach UK, which is a registered charity in England and Wales, with then the aim of raising funds to do what we've already been doing, but maybe in a slightly different way. So we think the Fossil Festival model still works, but we don't want just a single thing once a year. We want
We
other
could
ways of
do
engaging.
several smaller
Yeah, I
events,
mean, we can pop up,
different
as you mentioned, the
places,
Whitby
pop
Fossil
up.
Day
Yeah,
coming up
yeah,
at
yeah,
Whitby
yeah,
Museum. Can we contribute to that? Other places, and actually we're mostly on the coast, but are there other places we could go and take geology, paleontology
yeah,
inland?
yeah,
There's
yeah, yeah,
all
yeah,
manner of cool stuff
yeah. Because
elsewhere.
I mean, obviously the private discussions we've had between us all, it would be nice to see the Yorkshire Fossil Festival moving around
Yeah,
to get to those different venues like Leeds or York or
yeah,
Hull or wherever. It doesn't always have to be on the coast. It helps because then we can do um, fossil walks or whatever,
yeah, yeah.
or things like that. So I mean, so that side of it is tricky. But then obviously, you and Steve's job is then to find the funding for that, and setting up the charity would make that a little bit easier. I'm presuming.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was
Not
the
totally, but
no, it was the right thing to do for us. We talked about whether we should be a CIC, a community interest company, or whether we be a CIO, which essentially is a charity. And after quite a lot of discussion, we decided that the charity route was what we felt was the way to go. There's pros and cons either way, so I think there's not one single answer. But
yeah,
um, and then yeah, having set that up, we then spent time identifying and then identifying sources of potential funding and then writing applications and also building more partnerships. You're trying to work out who might support us and how. There's different ways, different elements of the
yeah, yeah,
fundraising that can come in. And I won't say we've figured it out fully yet, but we've now begun to get you events where we can generate some revenue of our own by ticket sales for walks or fossil polishing or whatever it might be that,
yeah,
that
yeah,
brings in
yeah,
some money, whilst then writing these applications to bigger
yeah, yeah,
organisations.
yeah,
And
yeah. I mean,
I-
is there not? Is there any crossover with the Lyme Regis Fossil Festival? Do you
well,
talk to each
I
other
think
or?
in sort of I say ethos, but I think we our idea of doing Yorkshire Fossil Festival came from seeing what Line were doing. So I think very
Yeah, yeah,
much we've been inspired by what they've done, and it seems the last couple of years have been very very big,
yeah,
very
yeah. I
successful.
mean, down
Um,
there excellent, excellent work.
so I think it would be
I
nice
think
to.
I mean they said obviously I have private discussions with them as well about different things. But yeah, I mean they one of the things they said was they didn't want to get any bigger, but it's like very difficult to see it not getting any bigger because it is it's going to get it's very very popular this year. Probably next year, yeah, sure, it's all based on the weather, but I can't see why it can't grow even further at the
No, and I
minute.
guess that's the
I don't want it
challenge
to.
of
No, grow is different to what I mean. I
yeah.
mean,
I think
grow.
what
I don't mean grow as in the foot area of the thing, but the amount of people. I mean, they've got a bit of a problem with the fact is that of where it is now, with the number of people that can get into town, parking and all that kind of thing. But it's a very very popular event. Yeah,
oh yeah, and I think there's as you say, there's different types of growth, and it has to be sustainable in whatever space
yeah,
or
yeah,
staff capacity or whatever. And I think we've said this is something that we have struggled with, particularly when we're doing it in a quite shoestring fashion at certain points. Is you're relying on goodwill and fantastic community people have got involved. Again, go back to that point earlier on of I think we've grown a kind of Yorkshire Fossil Festival community, many of whom are also Lyme Regis community people. So
yeah, yeah,
there's a nice
yeah,
overlap. And some people, it's quite a long way between Lyme and Redcar or Whitby. So there's some points where you think, okay, people perhaps aren't going to keep moving between these two. But I think there's certainly an option of looking at how you take the ideas and the science communication, the content to other places, other audiences. So I think it's certainly something that we as a charity are really keen to explore, and we're having conversations around this in other parts of the UK, particularly if they're not perhaps served
mm,
currently that well, but have really
yeah.
interesting geoheritage, fossils, whatever. So there's plenty of places that you could do stuff, but you've got to have
Yeah,
the
I mean, it's
people, the
because
money. So
as far as I can see, I mean, I've seen a few of the festivals as such popping up from time to time. I think there was one in Telford Museum or
Yes, yeah,
something. Yeah,
yeah,
that propped up, and DinoCon, I
yeah,
think that's on
yeah,
soon.
yes,
So there is a thirst,
yeah,
if that's the right word,
yeah,
for such events, particularly if they're obviously geared towards children. But if you then can get the children there, they bring the adults, and the adults then may well find something for them there as
yeah,
well. Talks and um, activities for adults as well. Really.
yeah. And I think one of the things we've thought a lot about is the Yorkshire Fossil Festival is quite clearly prescribed in location and theme. It's going to
Yeah,
be in
yeah,
Yorkshire about
yeah,
fossils,
yeah,
and we
yeah,
said with the Earth Science Outreach charity, we have got a broader remit. We think probably at the moment that sort of the north and east of England, particularly, that's where we've done a lot of work, is somewhere that we could do more Earth heritage engagement and not just do the fossils. But they are, I think, as Steve often describes, kind of the gateway drug. People get in via
yeah, yeah,
dinosaurs or
yeah,
ammonites
yeah,
or
yeah, yeah,
fossils.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then you
yeah,
may be able to say, all right, well, why, like you said about taphonomy, why have they fossil? Why does Whitby have all these ammonites? Or
yeah,
why are
yeah,
these
yeah,
dinosaur
yeah,
footprints found here or whatever? So there's a lot of kind of development potential. And I think
yeah,
we said, we feel as a charity, again, that whilst fossils are absolutely a key part of what we do, we want to also be considering earth science more broadly and engaging things that, you said, cosmology and astronomy and, uh,
yeah,
you know,
yeah, yeah,
many different sort of disciplines, that oceanography, that are perhaps a little bit away from what we tended to do.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah,
the fossils will always be at the heart of it in some
yeah,
way,
yeah,
but
yeah,
there's opportunity for other things as
yeah,
well.
yeah. I'd come to a stargazing night. Yeah,
Yeah, well, I remember us talking about this idea of, with the right people, you say, "Oh, the light from these stars is ancient light. How far back in geological time can you go with different
yeah, yeah,
telescopes? And could you look at dinosaur time? And I don't know. There's a sort of interesting connection there
yeah,
of
yeah,
astronomy and geology. So yeah, exploring those and doing creative
yeah.
engagement.
Is that the aim of the charity? Is it going forward? Is just basically just, I suppose, just doing it more and more and more of the outreach and the education and
Well, I think what we said in our sort of big grant application that we put together, well, Steve particularly led on putting together, was, can we do a focused sort of training program of saying, look, we've got various people who are great science communicators, and there's lots of people who might either want to do it as a career or might want to get better at it or have you. Can
yeah,
we
yeah,
develop a sort of program in different locations, different themes, where people who know how they do their communication can then work with different creative people and aspiring science communicators to build up a bigger community? Because as we often said, you do have not quite single points of failure, but you've got quite often people who are doing lots of things, lots of places. If we've got
yeah,
more people who can do it, then it's
yeah,
probably a good thing. But yeah, we obviously have to get the funding to be able to do that. So that's still work in progress. But at the moment, that's
yeah,
one. We're looking at events we can contribute to, but yeah, particularly the legacy or the longer term aims of how we can help
yeah, yeah.
the
Well,
community.
it's interesting because obviously, when I moved to Whitby, it was there was no point of contact.
Yeah,
The museum, there was museum, but there was nobody in the museum. So that's one of the reasons why I opened the shop, because
yeah,
there's not an easy way of having a point of contact for um, collectors to get things identified and things. So I mean now, probably not now, but the museum used to send people down to the shop, and I used to identify things for them. It's to have
well,
that
and I think actually,
network
having
involved, isn't it?
um, having worked in museums at various points during my sort of academic career, but actually since then as a freelancer, there is this problem where the expertise geologically, paleontologically, is not always in the museums, and then they're like, okay, I've got this
Yeah,
collection, whether it's historic or new,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
how do I make sense of it? And this is something again that we're like, there's no easy solution, but um, there are people out there, and paleontologists. It's quite a broad church, and I think people, sometimes they wouldn't call themselves paleontologists, but there's a lot of knowledge out there
yeah, yeah,
in
yeah,
different members of the community. And I think if we can find better ways, and the archaeologists have been quite good at it with portable antiquity scheme, things like that, of
yeah, yeah,
connecting.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And I know Paul Davis and others at Lyme Regis have talked about this kind of question of, are there ways of perhaps learning from what others have done, and maybe
yeah, yeah.
tapping into that expertise. But yeah, it's not easy. So I think it's something we'd certainly look to do in the longer term.
Yeah.
But yeah, money's always going to be a key part of it, or time as money.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's all very interesting. As you know, I'm a great supporter of the charity as well. So going forward,
well, that's it. Hopefully, it's something where we
however
are
I can help
supporting.
out, obviously.
Yeah, supporting different members of the community doing different things, and it's kind of a promotional. Yeah, we can build those relationships, networks, partnerships, etc.
Yeah. So we're coming towards the end. So don't worry.
I can talk for quite a while, so it's not not normally
well, Steve did mention that. But yeah, I mean, why should the average person care about earth science?
Well, I think the phrase I used to say to our students at Hull was, if you can't grow it, it has to be mined. So everything that we use on Earth currently, that might change, but currently is either grown in some way or mined in some way. And therefore, understanding the Earth and the things it has in it is an absolutely crucial part of our existence on planet Earth.
I mean, just look at they're always talking about AI. Need more chips. They need more rare earth elements. Where's the rare earth elements going to come from? They're going to come from the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. So, whilst I don't pretend to be a mining geologist or an economic geologist in that sense, I think it's something that we need to kind of work to raise awareness of the importance. And then, the many elements of earth science, and we've touched upon a few of them already, that it doesn't have to be about that. It can be about many other things as well, but it still has relevance. It's about, you talk about the present is the key to the past, and the past is the key to the future. So actually, all of that, we're sitting at any point in time, we're sitting at an interval between these, these great geological depths, and then what the future might hold. And so, being an earth scientist in some fashion, it doesn't mean you'll have to have degrees in it or what have you, but just having that awareness, I think, is good for people, society, what have you. And then, as I say, I think there's a big part as well of things like fossiling and pebbling and mineral study and whatever gives people pleasure outdoors or in their shed or wherever. So that's something we should also celebrate, recognize, and say it doesn't have to be about a commercial element. It can be about a purely kind of well-being element, and that's fine too.
Yeah. That's great. That's brilliant. Right. So got a few. Luckily, we haven't got loads, but I've got a couple of quick fire questions. We probably won't end up not being quick fire anyway. But I've got a few more questions, obviously.
Right.
I mean, every paleontologist has his favourites, don't they? Okay. So, what's your favourite fossil?
I say to people, it changes quite a lot from time to time.
Well, it has been noted that you don't do an awful lot of dinosaurs. So
I have with me my little NHM Invicta Plastics Cetiosaurus, because Leicester Museum had the Cetiosaurus skeleton. Invicta Plastics was based near where my dad grew up in Oadby in Leicester, so it was kind of a strange connection. So if I say, what about dinosaurs? I go, Cetiosaurus, not least because people don't really know much about it on the whole. So
So sauropod that lived in the Jurassic.
Yeah, and probably makes Yorkshire coast footprints as well. So it's quite good.
Yeah.
But I think I have to go back to kind of the Silurian and the Wenlock limestone and Dudley, where I did my PhD, because one of the first things I wrote about that was on the first starfish that had more than 5 arms.
Oh, right,
and there's a thing called Lepidasta greyi, which has 13 arms, and it was a really fascinating thing of why would you go from 5 to I've got enough 13. And one of the arguments from modern biology is that when multiradiate, that starfish with more than 5 rays, grow, they can either do it in 4 of the gaps and have 5 plus 4 plus 4, or they can just grow them all in 1 gap. And if you go 5 plus 4 plus 4, you get 13. So it's not impossible that that's kind of what they do. We can't ever prove it because there's no soft tissue, genetic or whatever. But Lepidasta greyi I have a particular fondness for because of this strange multi-armed Dudley starfish.
Which fossil discovery still amazes you?
I suppose the kind of the charnier, again, I grew up in Leicester, but the sort of stories of these, and actually the schoolboy, Roger Mason, acknowledges that a schoolgirl, Tina Batty, as she was, later Tina Negus, actually discovered things before he did, but her teacher didn't agree with her. So he got the recognition. It became Charnia Masoni.
Yeah.
She was very magnanimous at a meeting a few years ago. She said, well, it would have been Charnia Batty.
For those who are listening and don't know, so Charnia Masonite is a soft-bodied leaf-like structure that was in the Precambrian.
Yeah.
Go on then. Tell me how many
it's a late
Precambrian, billions of years old.
It's what do we 565 or so. I mean, it's quite late Precambrian.
So it's like one of the very earliest known forms of life.
Certainly, the complex. I think this is one of the key things, that you have a lot of simple Precambrian life for a long time, and then towards the end of what we now call the Ediacaran period, you geologically suddenly start to see these much more complex things. And the great topic of debate is: are they animals?
My friend calls them blobs on rocks.
Well, that's it. And some very much. I did once find
small algae and stuff like that. But then you occasionally get these. I think Chinese called a ranger morph, which are kind of more like leaf-like structures, like seaweed that had a holdfast. Sometimes you just find the holdfast, but occasionally, in this case in Charnia, it was actually the impression left by the actual creature itself.
And actually, sometimes going back to your thing about taphonomy and preservation, that volcanic ash deposits blanketed the seafloor, preserve these things beautifully in very high resolution. And there's still, say, a lot of discussion about they are clearly complex organisms. They would almost certainly be multicellular. They're too complex not to be. But there's still quite a lot of arguments about, are they animals, or which ones are animals and which ones are nearly animals? And you get this whole thing of classification.
The coolest thing about that is the fact that they are effectively our earliest ancestors.
Yeah,
because some of them would have then got a backbone.
Somewhere in that Ediacaran assemblage of strange things has to be. Well, so it may not be fossilized, but in there at the time they were alive was something that became eventually us. So yes, it's a very curious thing to try and connect back to.
So old, and that was those particular fossils were found in Bradgate.
Park,
which is now a geopark as
Charnwood
well.
Geopark
in Charnwood, in Leicestershire. So people can.
So I have a real soft spot.
Visit the probably the. I'm presuming that there's an information place.
Yeah, there's a lot of new stuff. I mean, they've really done a lot recently with the geopark of new interpretation, and the science communication has really gone. Jack Matthews, who leads the project, has done some fantastic science communication work on this, and it's. I think people have got on board and go, "Wow, we have these really old, strange things in our backyard." I think it's again that your local heritage. It might not be things you already know about, but
and like you said, that was a couple of school kids that were out looking at rocks and thought, "What the hell's this?"
Yeah,
I don't know what this is.
Yeah,
let's tell somebody.
Not knowing is sometimes a good thing because you don't know what you're supposed to be looking for. And I think we sometimes say to students, you can overtrain or overthink, and actually someone going, "What's that?" It can be they just haven't known not to look.
I get obviously I get that a lot. I get a lot of what is called pareidolia.
Yes,
I get a lot of that. But interesting. Is there a specimen you've always wanted to find but never have?
Well, again, funny enough, with the Wenlock limestone stuff that I did, it was almost entirely museum collections. I had a really amazing moment a couple of weeks ago. I went down to Dudley for the first time in a while to catch up with Graham Wharton, who's the Black Country Geopark. And we were out on Wren's Nest. It was a scorching hot day, and we had a few minutes just to pick through the rubble. And I was like, I'd love to find one of the weird things I had in my PhD that were only known from museum collections. And to my astonishment, I found a piece. It wasn't a fantastic one, but a piece of a thing called a cornulated, which is a sort of a strange cup-shaped, horn-shaped thing. And I'd studied them. I've written papers on them, but I'd never seen my own one in the wild. So it was like, I'd love to find the starfish and the these really strange and rare things, but I have at least now ticked one of those.
I mean, some of the displays of Wenlock material that I've seen is just fantastic. I mean, I'm going over to America next week. I'll be visiting the American Museum of Natural History. But also, a very good friend of mine, he lives in New York, and he's one of the top trilobite collectors in the world. And so he has a very extensive collection of Silurian trilobites.
Well, I think it's great again when you
it'd be great to see that
you study geology and that the Atlantic's not always been there, and you stick the Atlantic back together and go, oh, actually, you can have the same species of Silurian things on either side of what's now the ocean. So these sort of funny connections. You have Dudley, and you can connect into many other parts of the Northern Hemisphere.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. So, looking ahead, what's next on your agenda going forward? I mean, lots. Know you're a busy man, just like me, but hence why it's now 7:45 on a Sunday night. But
yes.
but yeah,
I think obviously we want to get sustainable funding for Earth Science Outreach UK and be able to particularly go into schools and communities in areas that haven't had as much attention. So I think we see, I think Teesside, Redcar and Cleveland, where we've been doing work the last couple of years, and indeed other parts of the north and east of England. But I think we're getting a sense of the opportunities. Obviously, we need the funding to be able to fully deliver that. I think if some of that comes off, then we'll be able to reach out to lots more people in the area and sort of say, go down to these beaches. There's Redcar, Skinning Grove, Salting, Brunswick. All these places have got fantastic stuff. It's different each beach. So
I mean, in the short term period, though, I mean, you must have stuff going on over the summer period.
Yeah, so we've got actually I'm doing Redcar as a fossil walk on Saturday. So that's kind of my next one. I'm kind of doing monthly, typically at the moment, trips out, and then a few private trips during the summer holidays. Scarborough Museums, I'll be in at least a couple of times because they've got a new dinosaur footprint trail, so you can go and walk out onto the South Cliff and look for dinosaur footprints in the rocks there, and I'm guiding.
And then the Whitby
Fossil Day. Whitby, so 1st of August, Whitby Museum, Whitby Fossil Day. That'll be great because we'll have morning beach stuff, and then, well, I'll be morning beach stuff and afternoon museum stuff, but it'll be good in the museum from 11 till 3. And then Stades in September, the festival there. We've built up a nice relationship. It's an arts festival, so it's getting a bit different for perhaps fossiling. But,
different clientele again.
Again, I guess that's right. It's again a different group. So last year we did some stuff that went really well. So we'll do that on the Saturday, the 12th of September, and then hopefully more stuff in the autumn and winter as well. But that's still sort of work in progress.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. I'm scrolling down my list now. I've got a quick fire round. Look.
Okay.
We'll skip that though. We'll skip that. Well, no. All right. We'll ask you this one question. One last question.
One final question.
But you probably already answered it. What's your favourite geological time period?
I probably have to say Silurian because of that's kind of where I began. But it's funny now because I love the early Jurassic.
The Precambrian is pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean that's it.
That explosion of life is pretty incredible.
Yeah, I think.
I mean, obviously, I'm a bit biased because it's the Jurassic.
Yeah,
and then obviously there's dinosaurs. So, but yeah, I mean the explosion of life in the Precambrian is pretty special.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think again, being lucky enough to spend a couple of years in Newfoundland where there is fantastic exposure on this interval,
wow,
that was a real eye opener. Again, some of the Precambrian outcrops are amazing. If you get a chance to go to Mistaken Point World Heritage Site, you really should. It's fantastic and bizarre. And then not far afterwards, geologically, you get all these burrowing things coming in, and it's a very different world. So I think there's that interval, that crossing the Precambrian Cambrian boundary is really interesting. But the last 10, 15 years, and a lot of work on the early Jurassic, particularly the Toarci and the Whitby mudstone, and I have a huge fondness for that as well. So I think I will go. I'll go into the Precambrian Cambrian boundary as a kind of as a favourite interval. But it changes sometimes.
One last question, and then we'll tie everything up. If you could inspire one child out there listening to become a scientist, what advice would you give them?
I think you've always got more time than you think. I know geological time's huge, but actually in your life, you often don't appreciate that it's not like you're at school, you often do things and you think, if I don't do this exam or I don't do this, that's going to change everything. And it matters, of course, but actually there's always more time than you think. And actually, I wasn't really a full-on scientist at a younger age. I was a bit of a mixture. And I think certainly in earth science, that's a good thing. So if you're looking at the earth and fossils and so on, your skill set doesn't have to be a purely scientific one. It can come from other directions and you'll still be able to contribute major things. So yeah, don't write yourself off because you did badly in A levels, or you chose wrong somewhere, or you think you're no good at chemistry. There's always other ways of contributing. So yeah, keep that in mind.
Yeah, no, that's great. What a great place to finish on, really. Right, so thank you very much again, Liam, for going on this. I know I've badgered you a bit to come on, but thanks. We've got it done anyway.
Been a real pleasure. Lovely to chat.
And if you like Liam's work, you can check out the Earth Science Outreach UK website, and the keep an eye out for the Yorkshire Fossil Festival for events and what have you. Like I say, we've got the Whitby Fossil Day up at the Whitby Museum coming up. So check that out.
Yeah.
And if you've enjoyed this podcast, don't forget to like, subscribe, share a comment, share whatever you want with me. And thank you very much again, everybody, for listening. Thanks for Liam. And we'll see you next time on the Fundamental Podcast. Thank you very much.